Yeah, I mean, in the existing law in Section 70, what we see is the core protection against excessive pollution. Yeah, you can just see by really like side by side comparison that is just a huge weakening and gutting of those sections that were in 70. For example, if you want to discharge consent as a permitted activity, you still have to comply with certain things, and one of those is to make sure that you're not, causing significant adverse effects to aquatic life. And it seems to me that in this new amendment, they've just sort of said, yeah, well, we've crossed that line. Um, some of these rivers are clearly some of these discharges to rivers have caused these sort of effects, and well, it's too hard for us to do anything about it, so we're just going to allow it to continue. I mean, that's what I'm reading on that new amendment.
Yeah, it does feel like the changes amount to giving up on some really basic minimum standards that have been in law for a long time on um, taking away the mechanism that we have to bring our levels of pollution back within those standards and kind of giving up on those.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's not just, I mean, we don't want to see significant effects on aquatic life in our waterways. We don't want to see conspicuous change in colour or visual clarity, and we don't want to see the rendering of it unsuitable for consumption by farm animals. So in those places where that's already happening, I think rather than opening up the pathway for these to be managed basically as a permitted activity, which is supposed to be like a low risk activity,
Yeah.
rather than putting more effort into managing those activities through consents,
Mm,
is a really serious move away from the core protections that the RMA has had for a long time for
yeah.
freshwater.
And do you think that
Yeah.
is this the first time that we've really seen a government like sort of explicitly strip a lot of those protections?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a first time in the history of the RMA that those um, core protections have been um, given this level of exception for
Yeah.
permitted activity rules.
I do,
There's all
yeah. I
yeah
do, I do see in that amendment there's a commitment for the discharger to sort of ensure that they're staging a reduction of those effects over time, and it says 10 years, but there doesn't seem to me to be any sort of yardstick to which they can measure that against.
yeah, that's right. There's no indication of how quickly they need to move, and how much improvement we expect to see. And also it's worth noting that one of the reasons that freshwater pollution has gotten bad in the course of the RMA, the law that we currently have, has been because of the lack of ability to detect how our land use practices are resulting in outcomes in receiving environment, and the lack of robust monitoring and reaction to that monitoring. So to now introduce a provision which is really dependent on um, uh, an improvement being felt in a receiving environment when we're not really able to detect that is quite disingenuous.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't sit well with. I think I remember the government or national government making some sort of commitment to certainly not make things worse.
Yes.
Um, whereas, yeah, I mean, this is just a flagrant breach of that sort of principle, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that the most clear breach of that really is the change to subsection 71C, which is
Uh-huh.
just to completely remove the consideration of the whether a discharge, a polluting discharge is going to give rise to the conspicuous floatable or suspended materials. That is a really important bottom line in our law that's been there a long time,
Yep.
and it applies to all discharges, not just farming discharges. It applies to any kind of discharge.
And they've just removed that wording.
They've just removed that wording completely.
And is there any analysis why, or it's just explicitly taken?
No, the analysis that is available just says that the intention is to remove that. And that's really interesting because in a briefing to the minister earlier in 2024, the ministry did warn that this is a core provision of our environmental constraints on what we can do to pollute fresh water, and that removal of those provisions would not be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So it's pretty hard. Yeah, it's pretty hard to get away from the idea that, yeah, the government's kind of signaling that, yeah, we're walking away from this issue. Things are bad, and it would require a heck of a lot more concentrated effort to pull us away from that.